What is going on, guys? How y'all doing? This is the Club of the Man 1993, and we are here live tonight, this Sunday evening, to do some catching up. I have 3 streams I gotta do. I got 6 more Seinfeld reviews going to come tonight. I got hopefully a Harry Potter Let's Play to do tonight as well. Got a lot to do, as Sundays anymore are usually content days for me. I could have definitely done some of this stuff last week, but hectic week at work, tired, other stuff I wanted to do last week. You know the drill. But we're going to get caught up tonight here. First, starting off with our live review of this past week's episode of AEW Dynamite. This took place this past Wednesday, August 17th, 2022, in Columbus, Ohio. It is also a show known as the House of the Dragon, as Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was in house. Actually, wait a minute. No, was this in Charleston? This is Charleston, West Virginia. I don't know why I said Columbus. I think it was. Hang on here. Yeah, this was in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm sorry, I gotta change the tag. This was Charleston, West Virginia, and of course, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was in the house during this episode of Dynamite. We got a lot to talk about, of course, not just this episode, but the news that leaked out this past Thursday about some heat between CM Punk and Hangman Adam Page. So, I would continue mentioning this, but because it definitely seems to me there's a lot of more people who are losing interest in AEW ever since this, change and shift with Triple H taking over creative for WWE. And I can kind of understand, because, again, WWE has the fresh new toys right now. It has a little more of the interesting product because things are about to change. There's things that are happening in WWE we've wanted to see happen for the longest time. To where AEW, they're on a steady ride right now. They don't need to get new people. They aren't really losing anybody right now, for the time being, of course. So I can understand why people are a little, I'm not going to say bored of AEW right now, but it's just the momentum's going back on the WWE side because that's the more fresh content we're getting right now. Where AEW, they're maintaining in the same spot. But I don't think AEW is still suffering. I know a lot of people are, I have some people telling me they're not excited for All Out and all this and that. Quite frankly, I still think Tony Khan's got something up his sleeve. And I thought this was another really good episode. I really did. I mean, I almost, again, just like last week, almost gave this show an A-. I almost did. But again, I thought it wasn't quite an A show. So it was that 89%. We had a lot of good things happen on this show, I thought. We had a match of the year candidate, that 2 out of 3 falls match. The stuff with Moxley and Punk is interesting. Especially, catch this, especially since they're doing the match next week instead of at the pay-per-view. We'll talk about why I think that they're doing this. And of course, what's going on with CM Punk and Hangman Adam Page. And even though it was pretty predictable, we did see a return from a man residing in North Carolina. And he looked pretty darn good. But we'll get into it and we'll talk about that. And we got Tyler in the live chat, who thought the show was weak. Unfortunately, I disagree, but that's what you think, Tyler. It's totally okay. We'll talk about why they're doing Moxley and I think they're doing Moxley and Punk on Wednesday. He gave the show a D. He lost his respect with Punk in 2013 after losing to The Rock, and now with his ego in AEW. And of course, he continues to say he thinks AEW is full of his egos, which again, I'm not going to completely agree with you on that, Tyler, but again, it's your opinion, buddy. I'm not going to diss on you for it. So let's talk about, actually, Mr. CM Punk, as we talk about this opening promo with Punk. So the show opens up with Punk coming out with the AEW World title on his shoulder. Last week when he made his return, it was not on his shoulder. It was not with him. So he comes out and says the crowd ruined his tough guy face by making him smile. And his smile isn't the prettiest, but his belt is. He hasn't been around and has some business to attend to. But he wants to start off with the less important stuff. We're going to talk about this part briefly and talk about the backstory behind what this part was right here. He says there's somebody who's from around these parts that he'd like to challenge to a rematch right here and right now. He sets the belt down and sits cross-legged in front of it and calls out Hangman Adam Page for a rematch right here, right now. And we're like, whoa, what? Like, the unexpected, like, this is, this is a little surprising. There was not expecting this, because we're expecting him instantly to go back into a program with Jon Moxley, since, he's the interim AEW World Champion, and obviously they gotta decide who is the real champion right now. But then, of course, Page does not come down, and he says, as I expected, that ain't cowboy shit, it's coward shit. And the apology must be at least as loud as disrespect as a general rule. And if anybody else wants some, come down, because everybody wants to be the champ, but nobody wants to do champ shit. So, before we move on to when Mox comes out, let's just talk about the news that leaked the day after this episode aired. So apparently, that promo there of CM Punk calling out Hangman Adam Page, who was in the building, calling him out for a rematch, and then saying the not so important, and hey, expected it, and how that it's not cowboy shit, it's coward shit. To me, I thought at first that was just Punk, because a lot of people keep telling me they think Punk's gonna turn heel, which I could maybe see happening too. Again, it's been 1 year for Punk being in. Yesterday was his 1 year anniversary of his debut in AEW, and not that I'm saying that I'm not happy to see Punk back, but it is, of course, at the point where it's like, okay, the whole I'm back, I'm great to be here stuff, it's kind of time to move on from that. It's kind of time to move on from he's the man who was gone for 7 years, lost his love for wrestling, but then came back. It is time we can explore those other avenues, including a heel Punk. This promo, however, was not supposed to be quite the case for that. This was Punk going into business for himself. Apparently, CM Punk was not happy with some promos that him and Hangman Adam Page had. The stuff that Hangman was saying in the promos apparently pissed off Punk that bad that he apparently met with officials. Some saying that it even pushed him to almost quit AEW. Which, if he would have done that, that would not have been too good of a look for him. When I heard this, I was a little torn. Because, I love CM Punk. One of the best on a microphone. One of the best in the business. You could say, if he had a little bit more, to his resume, you could definitely say he's one of the greatest of all time. I still think he is one of the best to step in the ring for sure. Punk, though, Phil Brooks. This is not Punk. Phil Brooks himself. I could understand why people think he is a selfish asshole full of his ego. I get that. Phil himself even believes he can be an asshole. He even said in his podcast with Colt Cabana, who he's not friends with at all right now anymore. And apparently that's the reason why we haven't seen Colt Cabana for the longest time, is because Punk's here. And Punk and Colt are no longer friends. But, he's admitted that, he sometimes cannot be one of the easiest people to work with. But as many people have said before too, sometimes in the business to be one of the best, you gotta be an asshole. And Punk, though, Phil is honest enough to say he can be an asshole. He is someone that wants to, be the best. It's obvious that he has times he wants things to be his way. But I feel like, and this is not me being a CM Punk mark, I'm not going to just, stick up for him and just say, he's innocent. No, he's not fully innocent in this. I do think if he would have left, it would have been a bad mark on him for sure, because it would have been a little bit ridiculous, I feel. Because this is honestly, it would be a thing where it's like, well, if this is not it, then what else is it? You know what? No offense. Like, I said this before. Some people have, like, again, especially, it's been changing, since, of course, Triple H has taken over, and some of these other stars who are not getting the respect WWE has gone to AEW. These are people, we're seeing the people, I think, who are coming across as assholes because they are determined to be the best. That's why a lot of characters in WWE were not, before, during the Vince McMahon era, we're not coming across as like people to take seriously, because they did not have anything in their characters or their personalities showing they care about being the best. And yes, CM Punk, Phil Brooks, flat out says this. He said he was Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of inspired him to have this mentality. The mentality of, if you don't want to be here, then you should not, if you don't want to be the best, then you should not be here. So, yes, he wants things to be good. He does not want to be disrespected. I really don't think Punk is that unhappy, though, with AEW. Like, again, he posted something on Instagram about his 1-year anniversary today, and to me, he seems happy. He seems happy being with the company. So I don't think that the whole fact that Punk wanted to quit is entirely true. I can see, though, how he could not be happy, though, about, I could see him maybe not being happy about some of the promos of him and Hangman, but he also could have done a good business for himself also to light some fuel on the fire. Because, they could, there's two things I think what's going to happen. Well, there's two possibilities of who else is going to be showing up with that match with him and Moxley next week. So it's definitely some like, oh my god news with Punk, with Punk not being happy, with Punk not being happy. So, but anyways, let's then talk about what happened after this. Because my thing is let's just say this, with either scenario, how I see this going down next week, it goes through AEW starts some type of a trend, even with people who have gone into business for themselves. It's referring to somebody else that I'll be mentioning in a little bit. AEW goes with the trends and rolls with it. Because they know that's something that's captured our attention with, these stories, with the internet. But anyways, out comes Moxley. And he says he's got a lot of fans. Oh, wait, hold I'm sorry. Moxley didn't come out yet. I'm sorry. Punk continues his promo and says how Jon Moxley has a lot of fans, and he can be number one in your heart, but he's not number one in this ring. CM Punk is, and he is the legitimate world champion. He knows what it's like to talk a big game and claim to be the best, and he knows what it's like to lose. But Moxley has always been number two. There's always been a guy that has his number, and Punk is that guy. And then, listen to this one. Like the shots he fired at Moxley here. Jon Moxley is the third best guy in his own group, and that seems to be a reoccurring theme in his career. Obviously referring back to how he was booked, in WWE, he was definitely, Roman Reigns was, the pretty boy, Seth Rollins had his moments where he was pushed, and Moxley was like the third wheel. It's obvious, again, that WWE did not value him more than Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. So why wouldn't Punk refer to him as the third best in his own group? He calls Eddie Kingston the third best Eddie and second best Kingston he's ever been in the locker room with. which number one Kingston is probably Kofi Kingston. Eddie? I don't know who else besides Eddie Guerrero. And maybe Eddie Edwards? I don't know. But I don't know what other Eddie he was referring to there. Let me see here. He repeatedly asks us to tell him when he's telling lies and admits he missed us. And he missed defending the title, and he's ready to do it again against Jon Moxley at All Out. But he also mentions how Mox ain't even the first John he's gonna beat in Chicago, referring to his match with John Cena when he beat him in Chicago back in Money in the Bank 2011, classic of a match. Now out comes Jon Moxley. And Punk's like, I got some time, so he does some snow angels in the ring. Mox comes down and gets on a microphone and says, watch out, CM Punk's dropping pipe bombs and writing checks at his mouth, with his mouth that his body can't cash yet, and he moves his leg and like kind of like, you know, points towards Punk's foot with his leg. But Punk, he claims how Punk thinks he's the best wrestler in the world. Most of the time, he's not even the best wrestler in catering. Punk thinks the microphone in his hands is power, but this is the real world, and the words he spits into the mic don't mean shit, and neither does the belt on his shoulder. To be fair, the belt on his own shoulder doesn't mean shit until he beats Punk. He's the heart and soul of this company, and every time he's called interim, it just drives him nuts, and of course the first person he thinks of is Punk. Punk says he can be the heart and soul, it's fine. And he's the dollars and cents. But then Mox says they both know how only come to AEW. He only came to AEW because he ran out of money, and being the best is about guts and fighting spirit. And we all know Punk ran out of fighting spirit a long time ago, referring to when he walked out. Go ahead. Prove him wrong. Do something about it. He isn't going to do shit. Punk says they have a match at the pay-per-view, and he's afraid of if he touches him now, he's going to make him bleed all over him. Because for how Moxley bleeds in a lot of his matches. And they go forehead to forehead. Mox headbutts him. And then they just start brawling with the staff trying to pull them apart. And it was a nice pull-apart brawl with the crowd chanting, let them fight, let them fight. So it seems like a hot start, teasing that I guess we found our main event for All Out. And, even though, Moxley, took the opportunity to be AEW interim world champion, he's tired of hearing the word interim because he wants to prove that he is the true champion. And, of course, every time he hears interim and he thinks CM Punk, it just makes him sick. So, of course, he wants to prove it. And CM Punk, of course, whether he's, a good guy or a bad guy or whatnot, he wants to prove, though, that even though he's champion, he does the champion shit and basically doesn't settle being on top of the mountain. He wants his people who's coming to step up to him to not think it's just an easy handshake and just hand out an opportunity. He's making them feel like it's going to be a lot to take me down, both physically and mentally. But this was not the first time. This is not the first and only appearance we saw from Punk and Mox on this episode. So, we continue on the show. We have Powerhouse Hobbs being interviewed, and it says how Ricky Starks showed the world his true colors recently. He claims he's okay with losing, and for 2 years he's paraded around like he's God's gift to this business, hiding behind him so he stayed champion, and he couldn't do it. Hobbs doesn't just break backs. He breaks necks, and he's got something for QT Marshall and the Factory too, which I guess are teasing an alliance between them in this feud with Hobbs and Starks. So I'm guessing we're getting a match at All Out, maybe. We'll see. But then we have, for our first actual match, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat showed up at the table as a special guest timekeeper. Chris Jericho joined us on commentary. And it's the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, versus the Dragon Slayer, Daniel Garcia, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. This is their rematch to when Bryan returned just a few weeks ago to fight for the Fallen, and Daniel Garcia beat Bryan Danielson. Now, I continue to mention this too. I would say after this match, as far as a wrestler goes, I definitely became more of a fan of Daniel Garcia. I still just don't quite understand his character. Am I still the only one who is just not like... I mean, okay, wrestling-wise, I was definitely popping for him after this. But there's just still something missing with Daniel Garcia. And personally, if the direction they're going with this may actually help. Because I said, I keep thinking the problem is with him and the Jericho Appreciation Society. Besides the fact that most of it's just like everybody except for Santana and Ortiz of the Inner Circle. But again, the other problem is the people in the spots. You got 2.0, again, who I don't take them seriously. I don't take them seriously, and because they've been paired with Daniel Garcia, I just think of him with them. If we get him by himself, separated from them, maybe I could see more. But this match, though, was it a classic? I definitely agree when people say this was a match of the year candidate. Bryan Danielson has definitely had some of the best matches of the past year and a half, and in the company, of course, since he came to AEW last fall. Against the likes of Kenny Omega, his matches with Hangman Adam Page, even his match earlier in the year with Moxley at Revolution was amazing, to Daniel Garcia, and of course so many others as well. This guy, he is one of the best. And he made Daniel Garcia look like $1 million, and the crowd popped for Garcia even after this match. So the first fall was won by Garcia, who got Bryan to pass out. Which, is kind of like a repeat of what happened in their singles match just a couple weeks ago. So that was nice. The second fall was then, of course, whenever Bryan won by like a schoolboy roll-up. And it looked like, he got lucky. Which, again, somewhat protected Daniel Garcia a little bit. 2 out of 3 falls matches that I think are excellent are ones when it feels like they're just battling the hell out of each other to get to that third fall. Which is why a match I can maybe use as an example of, back at TakeOver New York in 2019. NXT Championship, Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole. The first 2 falls of that match, I remember, were just decent. But then the journey to that third fall itself was a classic. And that is how... the feeling I had during that match, I was reminded in the journey to the last fall in this match. Again, the wrestling was unbelievable. The chops, the technical aspects, like just the basic art of wrestling was just masterful in this match. It was, in fact, a masterpiece. And then, of course, after, the battle and beating them down, Bryan Danielson eventually does get the victory for the third fall by getting Daniel Garcia to pass out to the LaBelle Lock. And Danielson, of course, wins the match, but things got interesting because after the match, you see Daniel Garcia, even though he had passed out, comes to conscious really quickly. And he's like moving around like he wanted more. Like he didn't want to stop. He wanted to keep going. Danielson, though, looks down and recognizes this and goes, hey, look at this. I just beat the crap. Basically saying I beat the crap out of him, but he's still alive and he's still conscious. Like, give it up for him. Tell the crowd to give him the respect. And the crowd just exploded for Daniel Garcia. Which I'm pretty sure Daniel Garcia, it's definitely a moment he'll remember in his career. Because Daniel Garcia has admitted in podcasts too recently, he is a huge Bryan Danielson fan. And originally, Daniel Garcia at first was supposed to be where Wheeler Yuta is right now in the Blackpool Combat Club. But of course, at the time when they were gonna split up Daniel Garcia from 2.0, which I thought would have been a good idea, maybe. Chris Jericho stepped in and thought that they shouldn't, and when he was getting ready to form a new group, that's when he pulled in Daniel Garcia in 2.0. Now, though, it may be changing up a little bit here. Because afterwards, Chris Jericho came in and attacked Bryan Danielson, which may mean we're getting a match with Chris Jericho and Bryan Danielson at All Out, which would be pretty awesome. I think they've only wrestled once or twice. Because I know they wrestled back in 2010 on the first episode of NXT with the rookies and whatnot. And it had a really good match. That's on the Daniel Bryan DVD that I got him to sign when I met him. I feel like he maybe wrestled him one other time after that. I don't remember when though it was. But that's not been a match we've seen much at all of. So that'll be fresh. But when Jericho came down and started beating up Bryan Danielson, Daniel Garcia stopped Jericho from preventing any more damage on Danielson. So basically, and then Chris Jericho says he wants to have a face-to-face talk with Daniel Garcia this kind of week on Dynamite. So is this... Basically, the story is here. Does Daniel Garcia think he's a sports entertainer? Or is he a wrestler? Which could maybe lead to Daniel Garcia leaving the Jericho Appreciation Society. And maybe he does join the Blackpool Combat Club after all. Maybe. Possibly. Who knows? Very, very interesting way to open the show after the promo of that match. And very surprising and interesting turn of events. And like I said, as a wrestler, definitely became more of a fan of Daniel Garcia as a wrestler. His character, though, I still feel like something needs to change. And maybe this surprise babyface turn is what that's going to be. So, we'll wait and see what happens in the upcoming weeks. So, we didn't have also a segment backstage with Swerve and Our Glory and Private Party. They're just being hype up a match they're going to have for the tag titles on Rampage this coming Friday. Then we have Tony Nese come out and make his entrance with Smart Mark Sterling. But then Jon Moxley, though, came running back out, blindsided the both of them, and took them out. He then rolls back in the ring and calls out CM Punk. He is sick of waiting, and if Punk wants to unify the belts, he wants to get this over with. Which, of course, brings out Punk, chases by the staff who are trying to hold it back, and then Moxley rushes the crowd, and then Claudio Castagnoli comes out and holds Moxley back, while Pat Buck tries to play peacemaker. Wheeler Yuta is there too, trying to talk some sense into him as well, and then Moxley finally walks through the crowd. And it is then announced, towards the end of the show, that we're getting a unification match, not at All Out, but next week on Dynamite. We're getting it next week on Dynamite, which I'm just like, holy smokes, really? So, because they're doing this at Dynamite, I think one or two people are showing up next week. I can maybe see them maybe unifying the belts, putting, giving Punk, the belt. It basically, making Punk the undisputed champion. And here's who I can see either returning. Well, coming out after that. To challenge Punk at All Out. Hangman Adam Page in a rematch. Because of, Punk going into business for himself. AEW tends to, roll with it. So I think that's a possibility. The other possibility, I think, we could be seeing the return of MJF. I think if MJF does not return by All Out, then I think he's going to WWE. I think he then is gone. But the thing is, though, if he was for sure going to leave, why would Tony Khan allow him to go out there and cut the pipe bomb he cut back in May, or first week of June, whichever one it was, and not follow up on it? I think the one I'm more confident about is MJF. I think they're doing their unification there to keep us on our toes. Because again, like I said before, with WWE gaining the steam and a lot more fans falling, into more interest in WWE now over AEW, Tony Khan is not going to go down without a fight. So having Punk and Mox next week with a returning MJF could be the right way to go. So I think it's personally a good gamble. If they have just a match and they have a winner and that's it, then I would be disappointed. Then I would be like, okay, why didn't we just save this for the pay-per-view? But I think it's going to set either a rematch with Punk and Page based off of what Punk did this week, or this could be when MJF returns and we get one more time CM Punk MJF, this time with the AEW World Title on the line. Again, they had an excellent match on Dynamite in Chicago earlier this year in which MJF handed Punk his very first loss, and that one loss for Punk means something. And of course, that classic of a dog collar match they had at Revolution was just fantastic. Do the trilogy. Give them one more with the AEW World Title on the line at All Out. It'd be quite the match, for sure. I already talked about what happened with Chris Jericho telling Daniel Garcia to do a face-to-face, but in the midst of all that while it was going on, up rolling came Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who says he's been watching Garcia and he doesn't think Garcia needs Jericho, who's the same guy that he was 15 years ago, and Bryan Danielson will be a better mentor to Daniel Garcia. Jericho tells him to keep his hands off him, stay out of his business, and walks off. Angelo Parker gets physical with Steamboat and grabs him by the throat, which earns him a slap across the face from the Legend. Thank goodness. Then we have the Ass Boys squashing the Varsity Blondes. And afterwards, Billy Gunn gets on the mic and says that's what he's been trying to teach them, and he's super proud of them, and it's the proudest part of his career to be able to work next to them. But then out comes Stokely Hathaway, who's teasing some new stable, and it leads to Austin and Colton Gunn attacking and laying out their own father, which leads to the Acclaim makes the save, and then they save Billy Gunn, and then with Billy Gunn the Acclaim do the daddy ass scissors. So I guess Billy Gunn's now the manager of the Acclaim? Okay. We'll see how that goes. We have a video package from Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh. I guess they're doing a 6-man tag with them against FTR and Wardlow, which is a little bit random of a tag match for All Out. A little bit maybe. We also have Death Triangle cutting a promo on United Empire as they will be facing them in the first round of the Trios tag title tournament, which would be a fun match. Especially Punk and Will Ospreay, I think will be a fantastic match. And then we have Jungle Boy Jack Perry come out. And he mentions that he wore his Christian's a Pussy t-shirt, but he got in trouble and was asked to never wear it again. But boy, oh boy, did that shirt nail things on the head. He mentions for weeks he's tried to get his hands on Christian Cage. With his hands, with a chair, and even a car. And what has Christian done in return? Absolutely nothing. Personally, though, Jungle Boy says he would not just take that kind of treatment, but that's just him. So either he can chase Christian as long as he has until he gets his hands on him, or he can man up and face him at All Out. which then brings out Christian Cage, who rejects the challenge because he thinks things are getting out of hand. Luchasaurus got himself suspended last week, and he's actually proud of Jungle Boy, though, at the end of the day. Out here with all his confidence and speaking for himself, a year ago it was like he was from West Virginia and can't string a sentence together, which of course the crowd gets in the boo. It's again this thing where it's like, he's trying to show that he cares, but he really doesn't. He's putting on an act. He's been thinking, and obviously frustration boiled over when they lost the tag titles. And they both did and said things neither of them really meant. And he understands. He doesn't want to fight anymore. He wants to fix this and go on another run. And this time, he's going to take Jungle Boy to the promised land. And he's like a son to him. He then asks Jungle Boy if he wants to come home. He puts out his hand. And then he takes a long time, it seems to consider. But instead, he then takes down Christian and starts beating the crap out of him. And they just roll off to the floor and they brawl. Christian even thought he got the upper hand on him for a second when he did hit a kick on him, and he seemed to get the upper hand. But then when he's just about to use the steel steps on Jungle Boy reversed it, put Christian's arm on the steps, and of course, after he smashed Christian's head into the stairs a few times, he then puts his arm out and he stomps on Christian Cage's arm into the inside corner of the steel steps, and obviously it put Christian in a lot of pain. And he literally just started rattling Christian's head off of the steel steps like it was just a basketball. Jungle Boy literally, I mean, it kind of reminded what I would want to do. I shouldn't really say that, but basically, it just reminded of like a typical, innocent kid getting back at a bully for like everything he has put him through and all the struggle that Jungle Boy has gone through to get his hands on Christian Cage again. And literally, he just showed absolutely no mercy on Christian. Like, it was like that defining moment we were waiting for of a purebred babyface, in some ways given the heel his comeuppance. It was an awesome brawl for sure to watch. And Jungle Boy just beat the piss out of Christian. And again, like, it was excellent. I thought it was outstanding. So we have that. Then we have FTR and Wardlow cutting a promo. Says there's no way they'll let Wardlow get jumped because nobody messes with the Pinnacle. I guess it's somewhat of a mini Pinnacle reunion taking on Satnam Singh, Jay Lethal, and Sanjay Dutt at All Out. Then Kylan King took on Tony Storm in a solid match. Tony got the victory with Thunder Rosa watching on as they are going to have their second match at All Out. I could say I could be excited for this match, but not quite as much because it's only happening again because Chris Statlander got hurt. So, I don't know, maybe this is where Tony Storm wins the title, because I really think they should have kept, Tony and Thunder a little bit away from facing each other for a bit. Because, again, Tony's still, getting her feet in the ground here. So we'll see what happens with that down the line. And then, of course, we then get our main event, which was going to be the first match of the Trios Tag Titles Tournament. La Facción Ingombarnable, which is a team of Andrade El Idolo, Dragon Lee, and Rush. They took on the Young Bucks and their mystery partner, which indeed was Kenny Omega, making his return after being out for 9 months. The last time he wrestled was at Full Gear back in 2021. He's taken some time off to heal some injuries. He's been wrestling for the longest time. He's had multiple surgeries. Apparently, rumors were he was supposed to be back by Double or Nothing. But he had a couple setbacks that set him back. And if he didn't get out of those setbacks, he did actually consider retirement, apparently. But the match was awesome. I thought it was really good. Kenny looked great. The Bucks looked great. There was that one spot of the match where they set up Dragon Lee to do this like dive through the ropes, and literally like him and Kenny just flew over the top barricade into the crowd. It didn't look like it was like a safe, thing. It looked like they went all out, no pun intended, and into the crowd without even playing it safe. But many good spots there, many great near falls. Did the lights just flicker? Or was that me? And Kenny Omega gets the victory, of course, with the one-winged angel onto Dragon Lee. Afterwards, it looked like that Andrade and Rush kicked Dragon Lee out of the group as he hit the DDT on Dragon Lee and left him lying in the ring. I guess turned Dragon Lee babyface. But outstanding ending, outstanding show. Great to see Kenny back. We do at some point have to get Kenny Omega versus CM Punk, I think. That'd be a pretty darn good match. And why not the rematch between Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega as well? Like I said, WWE, yes, is gaining momentum back. Yes, people are a little more, interested in seeing what's to come with this new journey with WWE. AEW doesn't really have too much new to show for right now. They're still killing it. I still think they're doing excellent. I'm looking forward to All Out, which I will do a preview predictions for and a live review for. Of course, that show as well, Labor Day weekend. As well as Clash of the Castle, of course. I'm still on board with AEW. If you're not, that's totally fine. But, like I was saying, don't diss on people because they like one product more than the other, or they like both products. You're allowed to enjoy both products, in my opinion. But that's my Dynamite review. I gave the show a B+. I do have 2 more live streams I want to do tonight. My SmackDown review. And I also do have a video, which the next one is not going to be SmackDown. The next one I'm going to do a brief stream talking about the news about NXT UK this past week. Yes, I don't review NXT UK or NXT anymore, but I do want to briefly talk about some of those names that are involved in that news, because there are people that I did know of. But we will talk about that, of course, in a little bit. So, guys, that's my review of Dynamite. I gave the show a B+. Stay tuned for more content to come tonight, of course, as it is content night. What are your thoughts, guys, on this episode of Dynamite? What are your thoughts also on CM Punk and Hangman Adam Page's heat towards each other? Make sure you guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure, as always, to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. And until then, guys, I'll catch you all later. See you guys real soon in a little bit. If not, have a great rest of your night. And peace out, buddy.